The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not familiar with that. And
let me just help you. It was. It's not a trick question. Right? It was Fusion GPS.
The report is my testimony, and I will stay within that text.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
In the colloquial context, known public context, collusion and conspiracy are essentially synonymous terms, correct?
No.
If no, on page 180 of volume 1 of your report, you wrote, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy. Are you sitting here today testifying something different than what your report states?
Well, what I'm asking is if you can give me the citation, I can look at the citation and evaluate whether it is.
Peter Strzok hated Trump.
Okay.
You didn't know that before he was made part of your team. Is that what you're saying?
I did not know that.
He's not corruptly acting in order to see that justice is done. What he's doing is not obstructing justice. He is pursuing justice. And the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
Well, that's just some of what happened today. To break down all the key moments, joining us, Sidney Powell, former federal prosecutor, and Michael Flynn's current attorney. Bill Gavin, former assistant director of the FBI's New York Bureau. Chris Stazak is former congressional senior investigative counsel. And David Schoen, civil rights and criminal defense attorney. Great to have you all here. Appreciate it.
A pleasure, Greg.
Sidney, let's begin with Robert Mueller and his performance. Do you think he changed any minds today?
Oh, Greg, I found the entire thing absolutely heartbreaking from any perspective that anyone would want to look at it from.
Why is that?
Because Mr. Mueller is obviously a shell of his former self, so it was humiliating for him personally. It's bad for the country that an investigation like this went on for 2 years, supposedly headed by Mr. Mueller in these circumstances. It's bad for justice writ large because obviously the entire thing was run by people other than Mr. Mueller, people that we know now to be, and even knew 2 years ago really, to be extremely partisan. And
Andrew Weissman,
Jeannie Rhee,
Aaron Zebley.
all of them, absolutely all of them.
Bill, you know, I'm reluctant to say this, but it was fairly obvious that Mueller was often confused by the question, confused with his answer. He seemed to stumble, fumble, and mumble his way through the testimony. And frankly, he didn't appear to be all that familiar with the report that he clearly didn't write.
Greg, I couldn't agree more. As Sidney said, I feel sorry for the man, but by the same token, him not being able to explain his own report is going to open this, I'm afraid, to some more examination of that report and getting to who wrote it. Now we're going to talk about additional bias in the people that did write it and reach those conclusions. I looked at it this morning and I said, which are his conclusions? Did he reach any of these, or did he produce a report or put his name on a report that somebody else wrote and had parts of it that he didn't agree with? That's a problem.
You know, hundreds of people were interviewed, Chris, and apparently Mueller sat in on very few of the interviews, and he clearly didn't write the report as well. Was this largely driven by a partisan team, not necessarily Mueller?
I think, unfortunately, and I agree with what Sidney said in terms of, and I personally, I'll say up front, I think the guy for what he did in Vietnam is a hero. I think he had a great legal career, which makes what happened today even more unfortunate. It's clear that he didn't have a full, like in one of the clips you just showed, he said he wasn't even familiar with GPS. he didn't know where that
Fusion
came from.
GPS.
Fusion GPS. So it really raises questions, and I agree. I think this just raises questions and highlights the importance of what the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut is going to do to look into all of this. It demonstrates the need for that.
John Durham. All right. What do you think, David?
I think it was a disaster, but I think what we saw today was a highlighting of just how despicable and significant it is that this team was selected of not just political partisans, absolute Trump haters and people who politically, emotionally, and financially supported Hillary Clinton, who's directly at issue in this report. Listen, just perfect example, it seems to me, Jeannie Rhee and Aaron Zobley. They come from Mueller's own firm. He claimed today that he didn't know when he selected them that they represented Hillary Clinton or Hillary Clinton's aide, Justin Cooper. That's outrageous. They come from his law firm. So consider now, those are two people who have continuing obligations to their client, Hillary Clinton. They contributed to this investigation and report and perhaps wrote part of the report. In no universe would that be acceptable.
Well, it underscores that there was no vetting of any of the people on his team. They were all picked largely by Andrew Weissman. We know that Mueller delegated the duty to pick the team to Andrew Weissman.